This episode of the EV Resource Podcast is brought to you by Titan Auto and Tire. Titan has some of the very few independent auto repair shops in Central Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs and hybrids. And from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. For more information and to schedule an appointment for your vehicle, go to TitanAutoTire.com. Coming up this week, we're going over the 2024 Corvette E-Ray details. Aptera debuts their Launch Edition vehicle. Arcimoto halts production, and much more. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 138 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and interviews with industry experts. This week, I've got an exciting show lined up for you. We're talking about Aptera, Arcimoto, Tesla, and many, many more stories. But first, let's go through the details of the new 2024 Chevy Corvette E-Ray that was unveiled this week. I mentioned it on the podcast last week, and hopefully some of you were able to catch the unveiling this past Tuesday. Chevy celebrated the 70th birthday of the Corvette by giving it an electric motor, and I'd say that is probably the best way to celebrate, right? This revolutionary shift in propulsion design comes from the desire to make the Corvette better, faster, better handling, and in some cases, almost silent. Because the rear of the car still has the 495 horsepower 6.2 liter V8 taking up space back there, Chevy positioned the electric motor in the front of the car. The motor puts out 160 horsepower and 125 pound-feet of torque and is paired with a 1.9 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery that is positioned down the center of the car between the driver and the passenger. The addition of this electric powertrain means that the E-Ray Corvette is now the best performing Corvette from the company ever. 0 to 60 comes in at only 2.5 seconds, and it'll run down the quarter mile in 10.5 seconds at 130 miles an hour. One new feature of the E-Ray that was never available on any other Corvette model is what the company is calling stealth mode. This drives the car up to 45 miles an hour with only the electric motor driving the front wheels for about 3 or 4 miles or so. Remember, this is a very, very small battery, so you're not going to get that much of an all-electric range. The purpose of electrifying the Corvette was to increase performance. Now, you're going to pay for that performance. Pricing for the E-Ray jumps considerably from the base model Corvette Stingray, which that starts at $64,500. The E-Ray jumps to $104,295 starting. And then, of course, if you add options and different things, it could get more expensive than that. Given the performance of the base model is still 2.9 seconds 0 to 60 with 194 mile an hour top speed, I'm really curious to see how many E-Ray models will sell over the other configurations of the Corvette. It'll also be interesting to see how traditional Corvette buyers respond to the electrification of the brand. Only time will tell, but I'm starting to get really excited and can't wait to see what Chevy does when the Corvette ditches the gas engine entirely. Next, Shell has taken major steps to get a stronghold on EV charging here in the U.S. According to a press release from this past Wednesday, the oil company has signed an agreement to purchase Volta Inc., the charging network that currently consists of over 3,000 charge points across 31 states, with plans for more than 3,400 additional charge points in the coming years. The transaction is expected to close in the first half of this year, subject to shareholder and regulatory approval. The closing of the merger will make Volta a wholly owned subsidiary of Shell USA. This isn't Shell's first move in this part of the business, though. In 2019, Shell purchased Greenlots. According to The Verge, that acquisition was carried out by another Shell subsidiary, Shell New Energies, which was subsequently renamed to Shell Recharge Solutions. After the Volta merger is complete, Shell will control over 57,000 EV charge points, most of them level 2, across the US and Europe. Shell New Energies is also working on alternative power projects like offshore wind farms in New Jersey. So while I'm sure an oil company doesn't have the same philosophical beliefs that many of us do, it is good to see that they're making moves in what we would consider the right direction. One of the more exciting news stories from the week is about Aptera. On Friday, January 20th, Aptera showed their Launch Edition vehicle to the world in an online presentation. Steve Fambro, co-founder and co-CEO, explained, quote, We've solved the equation for a more efficient way to travel by harnessing the power of the sun, and we're excited to introduce our Launch Edition vehicle to the world. Our tireless efforts have resulted in the Aptera vehicle that can take you where you want to go using the creative energy directly from our sun and efficiently converted into free movement, end quote. Aptera's Launch Edition is the production-ready design based on the Delta prototype, and once in production will be the most efficient road vehicle ever mass-produced. It'll have a coefficient of drag of only 0.13 and overall efficiency of roughly 10 miles per kilowatt hour. Equipped with roughly 700 watts of solar panels, the Aptera Launch Edition will be able to drive up to 40 miles per day directly from the sun, making it possible to never plug in and charge again. And granted, this is based on really good conditions, but even still, if the average driver only drives 39 miles per day or so in a location with medium sun exposure, such as New York or Chicago, you may only need to plug in roughly 3 times per year. Plus, with Aptera's efficient vehicle platform, any standard power outlet in the world becomes a place to charge your vehicle. When plugged into a 120-volt outlet, your standard plug, Aptera's Launch Edition can still charge over 13 miles per hour, or roughly 150 miles of charge overnight. And keep in mind that this is 3 to 4 times more than what other EVs can get from a standard plug, and the reason for that is that Aptera can go much further per kilowatt hour than any other vehicle. When plugged into a 240 level 2 charge port, the Aptera can recharge as many as 57 miles per hour when plugged in. That's plenty for people who never need to quickly travel well past the range of the vehicle. And while Aptera is going to offer different battery sizes to allow buyers options for desired ranges, the Launch Edition will come with only one battery choice, a 42 kilowatt hour battery good for 400 miles of range. The Aptera Launch Edition will not come with DC fast charging capability, something the company says would add a lot of complexity to the manufacturing process and that most customers wouldn't use. Aptera is finalizing the 4th and final phase of its product development, and as a part of this phase, they are going to complete crash testing and validation, which I know is something that a lot of people have been asking for. Once completed, Aptera plans to scale quickly into full-scale single-shift production of 10,000 vehicles per year, and from there, they will then expand their output to dual shift 20,000 vehicles per year out of its Carlsbad, California facility. And with over 40,000 reservations, that's going to take a few years. The production of Aptera's Launch Edition vehicle symbolizes the dawn of this era for the company as it shifts towards manufacturing. For more information on the Launch Edition, you can visit Aptera's website, which is aptera.us. That's aptera.us. Or you can click on the referral link at ev-resource.com/deals. And if you do want to order an Aptera, the Launch Edition or otherwise, I would humbly ask that you use my referral link, as it will save you a little money on your deposit, but it's worth $1,000 off the price of an Aptera for me, which, if they don't add fast charging capability, I am going to need that financial buffer. You see, I currently have on order the smallest battery size, good for 250 miles of range. However, I chose that configuration because I assumed for longer trips I could fast charge and then continue on my way. And if I can't, then I'll have to choose one of the longer range models, likely looking at this point at the 600 mile range one, which adds cost to the vehicle. And I'd like to avoid that, but I don't want to have a 250 mile vehicle without fast charging. So I'm a little disappointed about that, but everything else about the vehicle in their presentation looked good, and I'm really excited for the company. Things are definitely looking up. But while the future looks bright for Aptera, we cannot say the same thing for the future of Arcimoto. The Oregon-based maker of fun, three-wheeled electric vehicles, their future is unclear. Earlier this week, in an SEC filing, the company disclosed that they have halted their production of vehicles and will require substantial additional funding to resume production, which may or may not be available to them on acceptable terms or at all, and if not so available, they will be required to cease operations and or seek bankruptcy protection. The company has faced many recent challenges that included supply chain issues, a change in leadership, and the hemorrhaging of cash reserves as they work to ramp up production of their FUV and similar vehicles. On January 19th, the company successfully closed a $12 million public stock offering, which may help hold off bankruptcy in the short term, but if the balance sheet doesn't significantly improve, it may be an inevitability. In their Q3 financial update from last year, the company reported total revenues for the third quarter of 2022 increased 35% to $2 million as compared to $1.5 million in the third quarter of 2021. Year-to-date, September 30th, 2022 revenue increased 16% to $4.2 million compared to $3.6 million in 2021. The company incurred a net loss of approximately $17 million in the third quarter of 2022 compared with a net loss of $11.5 million for the same period in the year prior. As of September 30th of last year, the company had $65.6 million in total assets, $4.2 million in cash and cash equivalents, and $27.6 million in total liabilities. So they're definitely running low, definitely need money, and if they don't get it or don't get it the way they need to, they could have to go through bankruptcy, and who knows what that will look like. Naturally, I am rooting for Arcimoto to be able to pull through and find the funding that they need. The FUV, Deliverator, Flatbed, and other vehicles that they produce all on the same platform definitely show a lot of promise and fill a niche where needed. So good luck, Arcimoto. I hope you all make it. Next, GM might be considering a smaller two-door electric pickup truck to compete with the Ford Maverick. According to Automotive News, the truck would slot beneath the Chevy Silverado EV and would have a starting price under $30,000. That being said, there are apparently no concrete plans for production yet, and GM is still evaluating the feasibility of the new model. Both full-size and mid-size pickups have swelled in size in recent years, and Ford found an opening in the truck market when it introduced the truly compact Maverick in 2022. The company sold all 74,000 units it could build last year and already sold out of the 2023 model year. And now it appears that the crosstown rival General Motors has taken notice, with Automotive News reporting that the automaker has created preliminary designs for a compact two-door truck. GM is currently researching what customers might want in a small truck. Automotive News reports that Michel, director of Chevy Affordable EV and Crossover Design, said, quote, "We're creating these to get a reaction and then to try to modify it or move on," end quote. Affordability is the focus of the project, and Pivovar acknowledged that the two-door body style might be too small for the four-door dominated U.S. market. No production timeline was mentioned, but if GM receives positive feedback, it's reasonable to expect the electric compact truck to arrive before the end of the decade. I, for one, am not a big truck person, and more importantly, I am not a big truck person. So if they did end up having a small, compact, affordable pickup truck, I might actually have to take a look at it. There are things that I would use a truck for. In fact, things that I've been considering getting a tow hitch for my Scion because I really could use something that could tow a small trailer. So I'm excited to see this. I mean, obviously, it's very early. Like, we don't even have more information. This is just an idea, but I think it's a good one. And speaking of trucks, Tesla is reportedly finished designing their Cybertruck and very close to production. During a recent interview on the Ride the Lightning Tesla unofficial podcast with host Ryan McCaffrey, Tesla's chief vehicle designer Franz von Holzhausen said that the design is basically finished. When McCaffrey mentioned that production was slated for less than 6 months from now, the Tesla chief designer did not indicate anything would hold up the initial manufacturing phases. However, von Holzhausen did say that Tesla never has a, quote, pencils down mentality with vehicle design, and Tesla remains fluid with its ideas. If the vehicle could be improved upon, or if the company decides to make changes, it won't refrain from doing so. He said, quote, "We work consistently through the entire process, and we're constantly working on every detail and the refinement of that. So, and we learn things through engineering phases and the manufacturing development phases that we can improve on, and so we do," end quote. He was sure to include that the Cybertruck has features that customers do not know about yet, but in typical Tesla fashion, no details were shared. One of the more interesting tidbits of the interview was when von Holzhausen confirmed Tesla was looking at adding yoke steering as a standard option on the Cybertruck. While prototypes have been spotted with the yoke steering, Tesla has not yet confirmed whether it will commit to that for the vehicle. However, von Holzhausen said it, quote, makes sense. Tesla recently made yoke steering optional in the Model S and Model X, giving customers the option to choose from a traditional steering wheel instead of the polarizing yoke selection. Tesla has made plenty of strides in Cybertruck production over the past few months, including delivering IDRA Gigapress machinery at the factory in Texas, where the vehicle will be built. Tesla will utilize a 9,000-ton Gigapress from IDRA for Cybertruck manufacturing, which may have arrived at the Texas factory earlier this month. So I am excited about this one. I have never seen a Cybertruck in person, and I know that the first time I see one, it will be a memorable experience. And while I am a reservation holder, I put down the $100 to kind of hold my place in line. I don't expect to actually take delivery of the Cybertruck. I'm still undecided on that. Okay, so that is it for the news this week, but don't go anywhere. There's more to come right after this.
Do you own a business and want to reach EV owners and people interested in electric vehicles? EV Resource is welcoming businesses nationwide, both big and small, to become advertising partners with us across all platforms. The EV Resource podcast, magazine, YouTube videos, social media, and our webpage. For more information, please email Zach at hello@ev-resource.com.
It is now time for the Question of the Week segment. Each week, I ask you all to answer a question or poll related to the news of that week. And last week, I had asked, do you think Mazda should sell the plug-in hybrid MX-30 here in the United States? And the results were split, with 80% of respondents saying yes, and naturally, then 20% saying no. Charles Hall added a comment saying, quote, all depends on the specs, of course. 50 miles of all-electric range and a price around $30,000 would be interesting, but they'll probably miss both of those, and it will bomb here and overseas, end quote. And I agree with that mostly, Charles. It will likely have less all-electric range and cost significantly more than that. So for this week's Question of the Week, I want to go back and touch on the Launch Edition Aptera. Do you think that Aptera should offer DC fast charging as an option, or should it be standard equipment? Or do you think that it's just fine without it? Let me know what you think by heading over to the Patreon page. Once again, you do not have to be a Patreon subscriber to participate, so don't hesitate to leave your comments. Moving on now to the EV Resource Hotline segment. This part of the podcast is where you all have the opportunity to have your voice heard, literally. Send me your comments or feedback or anything else EV related that you might have on your mind. You can even ask your own questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. The process is simple. Record your message with the voice recorder on your phone and email it in to me at hello@ev-resource.com. Please include your name and location, and in the interest of time, try to keep your message to 90 seconds or less. This week, we have John from Salisbury, Maryland, who wanted to share some thoughts after buying my Spark EV. John, take it away.
Hey, Zach, this is John from Salisbury, Maryland. Longtime listener, first-time caller. So this Chevy Spark that I got from you here, I was expecting something that was like super cheap to maintain and something that was responsive and nimble and agile. And as it turns out, I kind of accidentally bought a car that's almost exactly everything that I ever wanted. I really like that, especially at slow speeds, that you press down the happy pedal and it actually goes. Like it's reasonably quick, certainly, faster than the gas-powered version of the Chevy Spark. I love regenerative braking, which is weird because I didn't think that would be something that I would appreciate, but being able to put energy back in that you already used into the battery instead of just having it wasted with the brakes is really awesome. I love that it has a low center of gravity, and for the first time in my life, I don't really feel like I need to modify the suspension on a car that I have. I wish that it did get a little bit more range. I end up driving like 35, 40 miles a day, depending, and it would be awesome if I could get a range that was, instead of 65, 70 miles per charge, closer to 100, 150, so that way I wasn't charging like every night or, maybe every other night. But I love the way that it feels. I love that there's no electronic nannies. Unlike my wife's Subaru Impreza, it's not reminding me to look in the rear seat every time we turn the car off. I don't have something dinging every time I go out of my lane. The cruise control works normally instead of the adaptive cruise control that always hits the brakes too often. But the other thing that I really like is that in the last year, I had a friend with a water pump issue. I had another with a head gasket, transmission, and then this thing doesn't have any of that. There's no oil changes, no tune-ups, no filters. I don't have to worry about anything. I just got a pair of front tires because somebody I know had a little, relationship with the happy pedal there. But if I'm good with the front tires, I might not have to replace those or anything else for another 5 years. So that's really cool. But yeah, I'm super happy with the car, and I love the way it feels. It's amazing. Thank you so much, and I appreciate everything that you're doing with EV Resource, and keep it up. Thanks.
John, I am so thrilled that you're enjoying the Spark EV. It was my first electric vehicle, and I can relate a lot to the joy you're feeling now. Once you go electric, it's painful to think about ever going back to a gas-powered vehicle. You will get used to not having very much maintenance, and yes, that go pedal is addicting. Okay, so that's your show for this week. Before I end, though, I want to thank our Patreon family for their support. At the director tier, Rajeev Narayan, and those at the executive producer tier include Christopher Lawrence and Andy Cooper. All Patreon supporters get access to ad-free episodes of the EV Resource podcast and are invited to participate in the monthly Zoom chat, as well as many other benefits. If you have been a longtime listener, or even if you're new and feel like I have earned your support, I would encourage you to head over to patreon.com/evresource and consider joining our small but growing Patreon family. Additionally, instead of membership fees or paywalls, I use advertising and affiliate connections to keep the EV Resource podcast free for all of you. Please consider supporting the sponsors who make EV Resource possible, and you can find a full listing of organizations and coupon codes and deals at ev-resource.com/deals. I also have on the webpage a small but growing collection of products on Amazon that I recommend. You can find that on the webpage under the shop section. As always, I invite your feedback via email to hello@ev-resource.com. And that is it for this podcast episode. So thank you so much for being with me, and I'll catch you all next week.